That's important to me. I'm a person of faith. My faith is what leads me to this journey. Now, some of you probably are aware of this. I'm Hindu. It's a little different than traditional faith of people who run for U.S. president as Christians. What I can tell you is that I went to Christian schools. I went to St. Xavier in Cincinnati. I'm still involved long afterwards. I've been on the board of St. X. I can tell you that we share the same value set in common. My parents taught me the faith that they instilled in me, that I have to this day, teaches us that God puts us here for a purpose. That it's our moral duty to realize that purpose. That He works through us in different ways, but we're all still equal because God resides in each of us. We're equal because we're equal in the eyes of God. That's what my faith teaches me. Now, you read the Ten Commandments, what do they say? There's one true God. Don't take His name in vain. Observe the Sabbath. Don't kill, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Don't covet. Honor your parents. These are the values I was raised in. These are the same values that our country was founded on as well. And I think that part of what's happened in this country right now is we've been taught to apologize for faith, family, who we are, patriotism, even hard work. And I think that reviving faith in this country is something that would go a long way. And as a young person, I think it's my special responsibility to make faith and family and patriotism and hard work cool again for the next generation. And part of the way we do that is by protecting religious liberty in this country. The assault on religious liberty is, I think, one of the great threats that we face today. And I think that as your next president, will we stand for those values more strongly than anybody in either party has? Yes, we will. And I think that's a big part of how we get this country back. Now, number 2 on that list is related to number 1. It says there are 2 genders. I never thought I would have to say that in a speech like this. But I'll tell you what's going on, actually, is this is actually, it's a new religion in our country. So when you stop believing in true religion, true God, you find false idols instead. So transgenderism, the LGBTQIA plus cult in this country, it's actually become a new faith-based system. The same system that says that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired on the day you're born. That had to be the case for gay rights to be civil rights. Now says that your own biological sex is totally fluid over the course of your life. You can't believe both of these things at the same time if you're operating according to principles of logic. But you can if you're operating according to a faith-based belief system. There's an old saying, it goes, if there's a hole the size of God in your heart, and God does not fill it, something else will instead. That's transgenderism. Number 3 on the list, that's climatism. What does it say? Human flourishing requires fossil fuels. Well, there's a new climate religion as well. Just like transgenderism, climatism. What does that say? We have to stop burning carbon in the United States, even as we shift those same carbon emissions to places like China in the name of stopping global warming. Again, you can't believe these 2 things at the same time if you're applying principles of logic. But if you're adopting a cult-like belief system, then you can. The same people who are most opposed to carbon emissions are also opposed to nuclear energy in the United States. That, again, doesn't make sense unless you're adopting a religious belief system. It's like the climate agenda was doing to our truth. I'm talking about it. He's like, okay, got to come down. And I think that gets to the root cause of what's going on in our country right now. We're hungry for a cause. We're starved for purpose and meaning and identity at a time when the things that used to fill that void, faith, patriotism, hard work, family, these things have disappeared. And so we latch on to new belief systems instead. Transgenderism, climatism. Number 4, what do you see? Wokeism. The idea that the color of your skin determines what you can achieve in life. Well, what do we say? Reverse racism is racism. Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley of the Squad, she said it that we don't want any more black faces that don't want to be a black voice. We don't want any more brown faces that don't want to be a brown voice. I don't fit her description of what counts as a brown voice. But think about that. How racist is that to say the color of your skin protection and the race-based quota systems in this country that say that you get a job or you get a promotion or a seat in college based on the color of your skin rather than on the content of your achievements? We reject that. And that's why I said as U.S. President, we will end race-based quotas in every area of American life. It's been a cancer on our national soul. It's divisive. It's anti-American. But again, it's a substitute. It's become a new religion that substitutes for the real thing. They say now you're a racist or a xenophobe if you say that we have to build a wall on the southern border. Or if you use our military to protect our own border. An open border is not a border. I've said that we will use our own military to protect our own southern border and our northern border too. Because a nation without borders is not a nation. That's what it's going to take to revive this country. We have millions of people entering this country right now who are breaking the rule of law. Who we are as Americans is we stand for the rule of law. That's what makes us American. An open border is not a border. That's a hard truth. Parents determine the education of their children. Again, basic truth. You didn't have to think you had to say, but now we're going to say it's controversial not because it's false, but because it should be true. Shut down the Department of Education. Spends $80 billion of our taxpayer money, raining from on high, but giving it back to the people of this country is what we need to do. So every parent can choose where they send their kid to school. That's how we hold our public schools accountable. Get rid of the teachers' unions. That allows public schools to compete with the private schools. If you're going to teach it in the classroom, put it on the internet. If you don't want to put it on the internet, then you shouldn't be teaching it in the classroom. And then revive real civic education in this country. I think every high school senior should be able to pass, should have to pass, the same civics test that every immigrant has to pass in order to become a voting citizen of this country. That's not too much to ask. You got to have skin in the game to play in that game. That's what it means to revive true education in this country. How are you? Education begins where? It begins with the family. The nuclear family is still the greatest form of governance known to mankind. That's a controversial thing to say today. Well, part of the reason we've lost the foundation of the family is that our government has paid for it. We're paying single mothers in the inner city more money not to have a man in the house than to have a man in the house. We're paying people to do the exact opposite of what's best for them. Pay people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work. More money not to repay their student loans than to repay their student loans. That ends on my watch. We will stop using our taxpayer money to pay people to do the exact opposite of what's best for them, especially when it comes down to the family itself. The family is the cornerstone, the building block of everything else in our country. The fatherlessness rate right now is 25%. 1 out of every 4 kids is born in a fatherless home today. I think that's unacceptable. That's what's driving poverty, crime. High school graduation rates would be 10 times higher if you're born in a dual-parent household rather than a single-parent household. Same thing for ending up in jail or committing a violent crime. Again, it begins with the foundation of the family. Now, we're taught to believe now, think about what do you do when you graduate from high school, you get that job, to apologize for capitalism. I say we shouldn't. Capitalism is still the best system known to man to lift us up from poverty. It's what allowed me to be the kid of legal immigrants who came to this country with no money, who's gone on to found multi-billion-dollar companies. That's the American dream. We should celebrate that. I want every kid in this country to enjoy that. Now, how did I do it? I was lucky because I had 2 parents in the house with a focus on education and a focus on God. That goes back to the foundation of the nuclear family. See, those 2 things go together. It's not capitalism over here and family over here. Family gives us the foundation to achieve our dreams. My parents taught me you jump higher if you're jumping from a stable foundation. Give every kid that opportunity, true equality of opportunity in this country. We can throw the equity agenda out the door and say we restore equality of opportunity. Against that backdrop, capitalism is the best system to lift all of us up. Not crony capitalism. Not what we have today with lobbying and special interests determining large companies having special advantages that small businesses don't. That's not capitalism, but true capitalism is what we need to restore in this country. And one of the threats to that is that administrative state. It says there's 3 branches of government, not 4. What does that mean? It means the people who we elect to run the government today, they're not the ones who even actually run the government anymore. It's the shadow government in those 3-letter agencies in Washington, D.C. that are actually pulling the strings and running the show today. the SEC, to the FTC, to the FDA, to the FBI, to the EPA, to the God knows what. That alphabet soup. They're the ones running the show. So I'm saying, you want to drain the swamp? Let's get serious about that. 75% reduction in the number of federal bureaucrats in my first term. That's what we're going to achieve. Shut down government agencies that should not exist, from the Department of Education to the FBI to the CDC to the ATF. Yes, the president has the power in certain of those cases to shut them down. Don't start with last year's budget as the baseline and then try to massage it around the edges. Start with zero as the baseline and then ask what's actually necessary. That's how I've run my businesses. That's how many CEOs run their businesses. Zero-based budgeting. Bring that to the federal government in Washington, D.C. That's how you drain the swamp. If I can't work for you all for more than 8 years as your president, which I think is a good thing, then neither should those federal bureaucrats who are reporting into me either. 8-year term limits for the bureaucracy instead of these so-called civil service protections. That's how you drain the swamp. And it's going to take an outsider who can't be captured. Every politician today dances to the tune of their biggest donor. It's a fact. In my case, that biggest donor is me. I don't report to them. I report to you. And that's what it's going to take. If you want somebody who's going to face down the deep state and speak truth to power, then vote for somebody who's going to speak the truth to you. And the hard truth I'll leave you with before opening this up is our U.S. Constitution, it is still the strongest and greatest guarantor of freedom in human history. That's the hard truth. The First Amendment, the one that says you get to speak your mind, and you do too, as long as I get to in return. That's the cornerstone for the rest of it. The First Amendment that says you have the freedom to worship as you will and as you wish without the government getting in your way. The Second Amendment, the one that puts the teeth into all of the other ones. Yes, this was the blueprint, the operating manual for a free society and a free country, the freest country known to man. At least that's what we have been. And we're going to keep it that way. That's what we have to revive in this country as well. And so, if I swear an oath to that Constitution, first of all, you should want a president who's actually read it and knows what it says. If you're going to swear an oath to it, you might as well know what it says. And I think I say that lightly, but I also say it in a serious way. It's going to require a unique combination right now to save this country. It's going to require a president who on one hand comes in with sharp elbows, ready to break things, break glass when necessary. You may have seen me do some of that on the debate stage, and you're going to see me do that in Washington, D.C. And I bring that and Trump brings that. Both of us do. But it's also going to take a president who understands the law and the Constitution deeply. And those two things don't usually go together, actually. Now, you might have the law professor types over here, you might have the business types who execute over here, but may not understand why. They duped Trump. That's what they did. They said you can't fire those civil service employees because of civil service protections. Well, read the law. Read the Constitution. Read Article 2. Those civil service protections do not apply to mass firings. And mass firings are absolutely what I am bringing to the D.C. bureaucracy. So it takes somebody with both of those things, an understanding of the Constitution and the ability to execute and get it done. Somebody who's built and run business as a CEO in the White House. And I think now more than ever, a leader from the next generation with fresh legs to reach and lead the new generation of Americans. I'll tell you what happened with my generation. We were taught to celebrate our diversity and our differences so much that we forgot all of the ways we're really just the same as Americans, bound by that common set of ideals that set our country into motion 250 years ago. I believe those ideals in our Constitution, that they still exist. I'm running for president to revive them. E pluribus unum. It's on the back of every one of our coins. It means from many, one. That's what won us the American Revolution. That's the vision that reunited us after the Civil War. That's the vision that won us 2 world wars and the Cold War. That's what still gives hope to the free world. And if we can revive that dream over group identity and victimhood and grievance, then nobody in the world, not a nation, not a corporation, not a virus, not China, is going to defeat us. That is what American exceptionalism is all about. And with your help, that's what I'm here to ask you for, with your help, that is what we're going to revive to save this country. Thank you for coming out this morning, guys. You guys can come in and join us. We got 2 seats here if you'd like, and that way we can even have an intimate conversation. Feel free. I know it's a little echoey out there. Kevin, you might close this door a little bit, and folks can hear us. I want to open this up. Let's practice what we preach a little bit, which is to say, give me the hard ones. Don't. I'm going to sit across the table from Xi Jinping. I can take it. I want to take the hard ones from our own voter base, and that's what it's going to take to revive this country. So, let me just ask, actually, I got a question on this last night. Did any of you see the CNN town hall we did last night, by chance?
Yes.
You did? Okay, well, somebody watched it. That's good. I had a question about my faith, actually. Is that something people would be interested in hearing about? Or I opened it up in the beginning a little bit about it. We'll, that the climate religionists aren't happy with what I'm saying. So I'll tell you that that's what leads me to this journey. And I think it's the cornerstone of this country, is that we're hungering to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Yet we can't even answer what it means to be an American. And I think there's a difference between being the pastor and being the president. There's a role for both. And both are going to be required to revive this country. But what I can do as your next president is revive our national identity. That's what we're missing in the civic sphere of our lives. And I believe that God puts us here for a purpose. And I think that those 2 skills I told you, they don't go together. That's what called me into this race. That's what gives me that sense of purpose. But to answer who we are as Americans, we have that vacuum in our hearts. That vacuum of purpose and meaning. We're like a bunch of blind bats. That's what I see in this country right now. We're lost in a cave, trying to figure out where we are. How does a bat figure out where it is? Everybody know that? Sonar signals. It sends out signals and then it bounces back and it says, this is where I am. So it bounces off the wall and says, okay, we're the same way as human beings. I believe in God. I believe in one true God. That means something to me. That is true. That is real. That bounces back. It tells me this is where I am. Send out a signal. It bounces off of my family, the 2 parents who brought me into this world. That's real. That's true. That bounces back. It tells me this is where I am. Bounce off my hard work, the things I create in the world. That's true. That's real. That tells me this is who I am. That I'm a citizen of this nation, not some nebulous global citizen fighting climate change somewhere. Send out that signal. It bounces back. It tells me this is where I am. What happens when those things disappear? We send out these signals and then nothing comes back. We're lost in that void. And I think half the job of the next president, yes, it's about policy, that's half the job. But the other half of the job is reviving our national character. Answering who we are. I think part of that is reviving the space for faith and family and patriotism in the next generation. That too is part of what we're missing. And I feel like even at times in the campaign trail, I don't get to talking about that enough. Because we get great questions, and I can take some too about policy. But I want you all to know that I believe that's the most important job of the next president, actually right now, is to stand up and answer who we are as Americans, for the ideals that made this country great. And yes, our Constitution, it was made for a moral people. And I think that moral vacuum is part of what we need to fill as well. So with that, that looked like you may have had a question, sir. We can come to you.
Well, you talk about your purpose
and I totally believe that. And I came here from Arizona. I have a farm on the border of Arizona and Mexico. And I've spent many years in Mexico. And I feel like I know what the solution is for the immigration. And the other thing is, I can't vote in Iowa. And you need to win in Iowa.
Yes.
And so I just plead with everybody here, make sure your friends and families and neighbors and everybody get their butts out there, because I can't do that. But man, you guys can. Please do it, because it is so important, just so important. And I'd like to talk to you about, this proposal. Good. Because
I'll take that.
Because I'm qualified to talk about that.
I'll take that. One of the things I love about this campaign is we come in with our vision, but we also learn a lot from the people who we meet on this campaign trail. So thank you for that. If you brought that paperwork, I'll guarantee I'll read that on the bus to the next stop. You got to listen to the people of this country too. You get ideas that you didn't know you had. But you're right. In Iowa, every one of your votes at the Iowa caucus on January 15th is the equivalent of 1 million people showing up. Most of them aren't in this room right now. So I'm here to ask you for your help. Not a donation of your money, but a donation of your time, actually. Take the time to tell people what we're talking about in this room. Bring them out. 100 people in this community, bring them out for that Iowa caucus on January 15th. I think we're actually going to deliver a major surprise. Many of the people supporting us are first-timers. They haven't been polled before. They don't show up in the polls. I think if we deliver a major surprise, if I win the Iowa caucus, I'm your next president. I think we're going to win the Iowa caucus. But it's going to require each of us doing our part. And so even while you're here, we'll take volunteers. You can't vote here, but you can volunteer with us. We'll take that. That's the way this is done, bottom up. Otherwise, the super PACs, the monstrous entities that buy up hundreds of millions of dollars of television advertising, that decides the elections. That's not the way this is done. It's done by having open conversations amongst citizens. And so I appreciate that. You said you're a farmer?
Yep.
I want to say something about farmers in Iowa. This isn't necessarily this part of the state exactly. How many of you are familiar with this carbon capture pipeline working its way across the state? Okay, good. So actually a few of you are. There's a reason why I'm the only candidate in this race who's able to even say certain things. To say that I'll pardon peaceful protesters from January 6th. Because what's happening to many of them is dead wrong. It's a civil liberties violation. That I will put an end to this use of eminent domain for a carbon capture pipeline, bending the knee to this global climate religion. I mean, why are they? Are you familiar with this one? So in Iowa, they're requiring basically the capture of carbon dioxide from ethanol plants, but then building a pipeline across farmland where many farmers don't want that in their backyard, using eminent domain to do it. In some cases, there have been ruptures or leaks in places like Mississippi where they've tried this, that sent people to the hospital. And even if you don't want it, the government's going to tell you, despite your Fifth Amendment rights to private property, that the government gets to do it, or even worse, private actors get to do it anyway. That's wrong, but there's a reason why. Literally, there's no other major Republican candidate in this race who's able to even speak about this issue. It comes down to special interests. It comes down to the fact that our politics is captured. And I think if you want somebody who's going to end the corruption, it can't be somebody who came from that same system. So thank you for being here, sir. I appreciate you coming all the way. I'll take the lady in the back. What's your name?
Healthcare is something that you...
Yes.
What is the statement you made? It wasn't healthcare, we need health. Was it mate?
Well, what I said was, first of all, just a damning indictment of our current system. We don't have a health care system. We have a sick care system. That's literally what we have. It's not a clever turn of phrase. It's just a description of what we have in the country.
And how come no one's talking about mental health? I wish some of our
candidates should be. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have been.
Huge.
It is a defining issue. So part of the issue is there's two things going on. One is we don't have a healthcare system that covers health. Health insurance plans don't take care of mental health care treatment. They don't promote in any way diet, exercise, or anything else. Why? Because we don't have a competitive private health insurance marketplace. Why is that? Because the system is captured by health insurance companies that have special antitrust exemptions. This is what drives up healthcare costs in this country, the lack of competition. They had exemptions from the antitrust laws solely for the insurance industry and the health insurance industry. I would rescind that. We need true competition in the marketplace. And they're coordinating effectively, they're lobbying with Big Pharma which promotes pill-pushing behaviors by doctors. That gets paid for, but not the actual treatments that can help patients. So my wife is a surgeon at Ohio State, actually. She cares for cancer survivors. That's what she's doing during the week. She's here Fridays through Mondays, often on the campaign trail. But the interesting thing is, she does a procedure that allows patients to swallow food who haven't swallowed for a long time. We have a system that will pay for all kinds of expensive pill-pushing behavior, all kinds of feeding tubes or anything else, but doesn't pay for the set of procedures, in many cases at least, that allow those patients to swallow. In many cases, she does it without getting payment. And that works for our family. That's fine. We're okay with that. But that doesn't work system-wide. So here's some basic changes that we need. More competition in the marketplace through a more diverse range of health insurance plans. Get rid of those antitrust exemptions. And then if you drain enough of the money out of the bureaucracy, you have enough people to be able to buy private health insurance for themselves in that competitive marketplace. That's what we need. The FDA is also a big problem here. The requirements for a new drug getting to market are purposefully high as a product of pharma industry lobby. And that insulates them from competition. That's what's driving the price of prescription drugs. And then on the issue of mental health care in particular, we need to bring back some of those mental health institutions, psychiatric institutions in this country. My mom was a geriatric psychiatrist, actually. She worked in the VA system, she worked in nursing homes in Ohio. Many of those mental health institutions closed in the last 40 years, again as a product of pharma lobbying. When pharma came out with its atypical antipsychotics, a major drug class they called them, that sold like blockbuster drugs, it was better for them for people not to be in mental health institutions because they have more people then able to take the pills. That was wrong. Now we've seen a rise in violent crime over the same period that we've seen the closure of those mental health institutions. Bring back that mental health care in a system that will actually pay for it. And then there's something deeper going on. It goes back to that loss of purpose in our country. That's driving our mental health epidemic too. We have a system, I alluded to it earlier, that pays people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work in the name of helping them. Well, that's not good for our economy, it's not good for the worker shortage in this country, but it's not also even good for the very people you're supposedly helping. 30 years old, many of them, stuck in their parents' basement playing video games, smoking pot, whatever it is. That drives depression and anxiety too. So you're not even helping the very people you're supposedly helping. And that's something that we need to fix in this country as well. So some of this is outside of the healthcare system, and some of this is making sure that we have a healthcare system instead of a sick care system. I do believe I'm the only candidate in this race who's talking about it. My family, myself included, I mean, I've started a healthcare company. My wife is a physician, my mother was a physician. This is deeply personal to me, and I think it takes a president who's actually going to stand up for what needs to be done, because this isn't even a partisan issue. It's not Democrat or Republican, it's doing the right thing for every American that's struggling right now to afford basic access to health care because our system doesn't pay for it. Great question, thank you. We'll go to the gentleman in the back. Last question.
What is your plan for trying to get a fair election?
Yeah, single day voting on election day as a national holiday with paper ballots, government-issued voter ID to match the voter file, and yes, English as the sole language that appears on a ballot. That's not controversial. That's common sense. Now I got to win to do that.
Can you do that? Right. So what do we do in 11 months?
So here's what you do in 30 days. I'm serious about this. The same reason we're going to deliver a shock in the Iowa caucus is the same reason I will win the general election in a landslide. We're bringing along young people at a rate this party has never seen. 40% of our donors are first-time ever donors to the GOP, of our 150,000 some odd donors. The normal number is 2%. So this has to be a landslide election. This can't be a 50.1 election. But a Reagan 1980 style landslide, minus some shenanigans, is still a decisive win. That's what's going to be required. And then we get in there and we restore actually an electoral system by setting minimal federal standards for federal elections that are administered by the states. That's how we do this. 50.1 is not an option. And I think I am the only candidate that's bringing that next generation along, building a coalition involving libertarians. And I mean, it's funny. Politics is a funny thing. So we reached out to some libertarian groups trying to bring them into the caucus. They like many of my ideas. And then my opposition starts to say, oh, is he plotting a libertarian run? No. I'm running as a Republican for president, but we have to build a coalition that goes beyond just the traditional Republican Party to stand for our values and win that election in a landslide. That's what it's going to take. I think I'm the only candidate who can do that. So you do your part and make me the nominee. I owe you back. My job is to deliver you a landslide in the general. Then we fix the broken rails known as our current electoral system. I don't want to leave you hanging. So,
Gosh, I was just going to say I appreciate your message.
Thank you.
I appreciate your truth and
Thank you.
appreciate getting back to the truth.
yes.
The truth is Donald Trump is wiping you guys off the map.
So the polls say.
How, okay. How
Yeah.
do we fight that? Because I think he's the worst thing that could happen.
Well, here's what I will say: is I don't believe these polls. I really don't. Now, for the other candidates, it's a little bit different for me. I think that's unique to me in some ways because we see this. The people supporting us are not the ones who are actually traditionally polled. Okay. So I actually love the America First agenda, putting this country first. I love that. As a father of 2 sons, my moral duty is to my family. As your next president, my moral duty is to you, the citizens of this country. And so I'm not going to win this. I'm not bashing Trump. My goal is not to bash people. I'll respect his achievements, but we got to take the America First agenda to the next level and reunite and reach the next generation to do this. And I think I'm the only person in this race who can do that. And here's how. It's by Iowa. If I win Iowa, I'm your next president. There's only 187,000 people or so come to the Iowa caucus. The person who wins is going to get 50,000. If you all, even in this small room, go out and tell 100 people and bring them to the Iowa caucus, that's a significant percentage of the people who come to the caucus at all. Raise your hand if you've been to the Iowa caucus in this room. Well, I think that says something. You're here, spending more time here today than you will at the Iowa caucus on January 15th. Do that and bring 100 people with you. We're going to shock the world. So, again, you do your part, I'm going to do mine. We each have a role to play here. And if you do, then my commitment to you is this. We don't have to be that nation in decline anymore. We don't have to be at the end of the ancient Roman Empire. I think as a nation right now, we are really a little young. I said this last night to a young man at the town hall. Going through our own version of adolescence. Figuring out who we're going to be when we grow up. And when you view it that way, it makes sense again. We go through that identity crisis in our adolescence. We lose our way a little bit. We do some stupid things. And we are right now. No doubt about it. But we can be stronger for it when we get to our adulthood on the other side. So no, I don't think we have to be that nation in decline. I think this is the last time I'll be able to tell you this. Not in 4 years, not in 8 years, but I can tell you this now. I think we can still be a nation in our ascent. If you all do your part, Porv and I are going to do ours. To make sure, not in some cheesy politician way, but in a true way, make sure that our country's best days are still yet ahead of us. Our team's here. Sign up to be precinct captain, volunteer, whatever it is. A donation of your time is what I'm asking for. I think the power to save our country is in our own hands. Jake, is it time for us to rock and roll? I'm enjoying this too much, but they're dragging me. Where's our next stop?
We're going down to Adair, Greenfield.
Where's that?
Greenfield.
Greenfield.
Yep.
So for those of you who are able, we'd love to continue with the day. It's all a little bit west of Des Moines for most of today. Thank you for coming out today, guys. I'm appreciative of being with you. God bless you and your families. Thank you. I appreciate it.